Tonight, emergency protest. Will Simcoe County be left short tomorrow? Police memorial. South Simcoe police officer remembered. And preparing for another season of West Nile.
Sharon Pocious, Mike Lane, K.C. Colby. This is VR News, live at 11.
Good evening. A protest by ambulance dispatchers has sparked fears of inadequate emergency service tomorrow. Several parts of Ontario could be affected, including our region. Roger Klein has the story.
Police, fire, and ambulance crews were quick to respond to this motorcycle crash in Barrie this afternoon. Within minutes, the burning motorcycle was extinguished by firefighters, and the driver of the bike was loaded into an ambulance for a trip to the hospital. The life-threatening situation is just one of several calls dispatchers at the Central Ambulance Communication Center are monitoring at the same time. Dispatcher Colette Cook says it's extremely stressful making life-or-death decisions as calls pour into the communication center.
There could be 3 or 4 code 4s, which are life-threatening emergencies, and the dispatcher is making the critical decision on who is the closest unit and most available unit to respond to this priority call.
Every call for help in Simcoe County and Northern York region comes through the Georgian Dispatch in Barrie, making it one of the province's busiest communication centers. Colette says the pressure cooker environment and non-competitive wages makes it difficult to hold on to staff.
We've lost a lot of people. We've lost, at least in the last 2 years, 16 people have moved on. And we have a lot of new people, and we don't want them to move on.
The Ontario Public Service Union is looking to level the playing field and is actually going to pay ambulance dispatchers not to go to work tomorrow so they can attend a rally in Toronto instead. The union is upset that ambulance dispatchers in Toronto earn 22% more than their counterparts across the province. The union offer has led to fears at the Ministry of Health that there won't be enough workers to man the communication centers. But here in Barrie, Colette says minimum staffing levels will be maintained.
We are going because we have a cause and we need to be heard and something needs to be done.
Roger Klein, VR News.
The provincial government says the average response time for an emergency call should be about 15 minutes. Collingwood, Midland, Barrie, and Orillia have the best ambulance response times in Simcoe County, between 8 and 9 minutes. It takes an average of 12 minutes for an ambulance to respond to calls in Wasaga Beach and Penetanguishene. However, several communities still fall below the provincial average. In Simcoe County, they include Tay Township, Springwater, Innisfil, Essa, and Tiny Townships. A wait in any of those places could run between 15 and 22 minutes. A Barrie policeman killed in the line of duty was honored today at a special ceremony at Queen's Park
at midnight. The union representing the province's ambulance dispatchers is downplaying any risk to the public during a protest tomorrow. The Ontario Public Service Employees Union wants all of its ambulance dispatchers who aren't working tomorrow to rally at Queen's Park. OPSU is calling for wage parity across the province for its dispatchers to stem the high turnover of staff. They maintain no community will be in danger during the demo.
I mean, at each of the center, for anyone that was supposed to work that day and wanted to come to the rally, there's a whole process for them to get that day off, and their managers, I'm assuming, wouldn't have allowed them the day off if the staffing levels weren't going to be adequate.
The rally is scheduled to start at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Hamilton police are turning to the public for help in finding a 14-year-old girl. Jennifer Cotto went missing Saturday afternoon. She left her Emerald Street.
A warning tonight to the people of Northern York Region and Simcoe County. You may have to wait tomorrow when calling for an ambulance. Dispatchers in Barrie will be at a minimum as their union OPSU pays for them to attend a rally here in Toronto. Dispatchers across the province will protest a staffing shortage and pay inequity. Toronto dispatchers are paid 22% more than their Ontario colleagues. And just a reminder tonight to motorists.
There's concern tonight that a protest by ambulance dispatchers could leave Ontarians at risk. The Ontario Public Service Employees Union, OPSEU, is planning a rally at Queen's Park tomorrow. Ambulance dispatchers who are part of the union are being asked to attend in order to protest what they say is a disparity in wages for operators around the province. But there is concern those who show up to the protest will leave the call centers short-staffed. OPSEU says it shouldn't be a problem.
At each of the center, for anyone that was supposed to work that day and wanted to come to the rally, there's a whole process for them to get that day off, and their managers, I'm assuming, wouldn't have allowed them the day off if the staffing levels weren't going to be adequate.
The Ministry of Health is concerned that operators who weren't allowed to take the day off will call in sick. Okay, let's take a look at the weather. A little bit of
serious injury or death. The union representing the province's ambulance dispatchers is planning a protest rally at Queen's Park later this morning, and at the same time is downplaying that it's going to cause any risk to the public. The Ontario Public Service Employees Union wants all of its ambulance dispatchers who aren't working today to rally. OPSEU is calling for wage parity across the province for its dispatchers to stem the high turnover of staff. They maintain that no community will be in danger during the demo.
I mean, at each of the center, for anyone that was supposed to work that day and wanted to come to the rally, there's a whole process for them to get that day off, and their managers, I'm assuming, wouldn't have allowed them the day off if the staffing levels weren't going to be adequate.
The rally is scheduled to start 9:30 this morning at Queen's Park. Some new and disturbing information about severe acute respiratory syndrome.
Just signs on the dotted line. And one of the conditions, very long legalese, essentially prohibits Williams from doing what he's already charged with. Beth?
Okay, thank you for the update, Alan. Well, to Queen's Park now in a protest this hour by the province's ambulance workers. As Global's Catherine McDonald tells us, they're worried emergency calls aren't being dispatched quickly enough.
Ambulance dispatchers march on Queen's Park this morning with a message for the Premier. They're overworked and underpaid and say the situation is now affecting the lives of Ontarians.
With a mere 30% retention rate of new hires with chronic understaffing, people in Ontario are going to die.
The problem is that police and fire dispatchers are paid significantly more. So emergency communicators like these are leaving in droves, lured to those higher paying positions. The result, disgruntled, exhausted workers in the ambulance call center, many with too little experience.
The Ministry of Health's own guidelines dictate how many seconds we have to get your address and how many seconds we have to give those to the paramedic. Those guidelines are not being met by a staff that is predominantly brand new to this line of work.
And I'm ashamed. We're not providing the service to the public that we should be able to provide. I'm listening to people tell callers that for the patient that's just fallen down a flight of stairs, I'm listening to the call taker say, sit the person up. Well, anyone who would know any first aid or had some experience wouldn't be moving a person who may have those type of injuries.
Ambulance dispatchers say the real emergency is now in the call center. And if they aren't given a raise of between $10,000 and $20,000, recommended by a government-commissioned report to reflect the wage considered the current market value, this latest healthcare crisis will only get worse. And Ministry of Health guidelines require a dispatcher to answer and dispatch an ambulance to an emergency call within 2 minutes. But today, OPSEU Local 201 told us that it is taking them about 6 minutes, Beverly, because of this short staffing situation. That's more than 3 times the Ministry of Health guidelines. Bev?
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Well, the Eves government wants more police officers in the province. In fact, 1,000 more over the next 5 years. The new police officers will be hired right across the province, and at least 300 will join the OPP.
A prescription for labor problems. The Ambulance Dispatchers Union holds a Queen's Park rally looking for wage equity and improved staffing. OPSEU says dispatchers working outside of Toronto are paid 22% less on average. To boost attendance at the rally, OPSEU will cover the salary of any dispatcher who takes an unpaid day off to attend. Toronto dispatchers are considering attending as a show of support. OPSEU also complains the wage disparity is creating understaffing across the province.
Our provincial ambulance dispatch centers are continuously short-staffed. They have a high turnover rate. The new hires are trained, they get some experience under their belts, and then they leave for higher paying jobs in the fire and police dispatch service. The Ministry of Health has told our unit only 30% of new hires stay on the job.
Dispatchers say they're just as busy at communication centers in London and Barrie as their Toronto counterparts. And one dispatcher told the rally on a shift this weekend, 3 of the 10 people on duty had less than 18 months on the job, and there were 4 vacancies waiting to be filled. Dwight?
Education Minister Elizabeth Whitmer cutting the ribbon.
First time ever, I'm really worried.
This is Global's Therese Sears reporting.
The union representing Ontario's ambulance dispatchers says lives are at risk because of inexperienced operators working in understaffed call centers. Ambulance dispatchers who belong to the Ontario Public Service Employees Union gathered at Queen's Park this morning. They say experienced operators are leaving to take better-paying jobs at police and fire dispatch centers. That leaves the ambulance dispatchers working long hours to fill the gap. It also means jobs are being filled by less experienced staff, and the union says that puts lives at risk.
Ministry of Health's own guidelines dictate how many seconds we have to get your address and how many seconds we have to give those to the paramedic. Those guidelines are not being met by a staff that is predominantly brand new to this line of work.
The dispatchers are calling for a raise of between $10,000 and $20,000 in order to keep experienced workers from leaving.
They say they can deliver through sleet, snow, and rain.
Soon, or else on Wednesday, teachers will begin picketing outside the school board. Well, they say they're overworked, underpaid, and stressed out. So today, provincial ambulance dispatchers took their concerns to Queen's Park, saying the disparity in pay between them and their counterparts in fire or police services is dangerous for Ontarians.
The system is falling apart, and it is no longer safe to the public.
Dispatchers say the wage gap of as much as $20,000 is creating high turnover, and that is putting underqualified people in the dispatcher's seat. Well, for its part, the government says ambulance dispatchers are being treated fairly, that it has hired more of them and is paying them more than ever. City doctors already laboring under the SARS outbreak.
The disease.
Ontario ambulance dispatchers paid a visit to Queen's Park today. They held a demonstration outside the legislature to protest wage disparities. Dispatchers in Toronto earn 22% more than those in the rest of the province. Furthermore, the union says they have trouble retaining staff because many leave to join police and fire departments where they earn significantly more. OPSU, the union representing the ambulance dispatchers, is seeking wage parity with other emergency services. And how long will the rain last, Dave?
You know what?
Restaurants have been hard hit during the SARS outbreak. Elsewhere now, Toronto Ambulance is fighting back tonight against accusations that ambulance response times are being compromised by inexperienced staff. The union representing ambulance dispatchers gathered at Queen's Park today, claiming experienced operators are leaving their jobs, being replaced by less experienced newcomers who they say are putting public lives at risk.
Ministry of Health's own guidelines dictate how many seconds we have to get your address and how many seconds we have to give those to the paramedic. Those guidelines are not being met by a staff that is predominantly brand new to this line of work.
But tonight, communications manager David Ralph from Toronto Ambulance tells Global News that public safety is not being compromised. Still, he admits Toronto's dispatchers are struggling to meet the industry standards for dispatch times because of call volume.
And another disturbing story that could affect your health. Environmental Defence Canada is saying tonight.
They add that the action is being taken as a precaution only. Well, a rally by the Ambulance Dispatchers Union at Queen's Park. They're demanding wage parity and improved staffing. OPSU says dispatchers working outside of Toronto are paid 22% less on average. The union adds the wage disparity creates understaffing right across the province.
Our provincial ambulance dispatch centers are continuously short-staffed. They have a high turnover rate. The new hires are trained. They get some experience under their belts, and then they leave for higher-paying jobs in the fire and police dispatch service.
Castleman adds the province had admitted that only 30% of new hires stay on the job. Meantime, dispatchers at communication centers in London and Barrie say they're just as busy as their Toronto counterparts.